In this very edition today, I'm going to be teaching you guys things which you don't know about Nigeria, and this is probably going to be one of the most comprehensive information which you actually going to be coming across on the internet about the real Nigeria, which is outside what the media is not really reporting. And the reason why I'm saying this is Nigeria copy a lot from America. I don't know if it is because of the population, because Nigeria has a lot of population of US. Their population is almost pairing. And now let me begin by saying that the comparison between Nigeria and US, and one of the topic which I want to share with you guys today is the reason why Nigeria do better in the US than in Nigeria, is hugely astronomical. And I'm also going to be elaborating on why Nigeria look at US like another heaven or a safe haven compared to Nigeria. A lot has happened to Nigeria, and I would say politicians has happened to Nigeria. A lot of when they talk about bad leadership or corruption in Nigeria, I don't think that you guys really know what it is. You don't know how deep it is. So I'm going to be giving you the full detail of what it is. And so the first way which I'm going to be using to narrate this the best possible way which I understand is everything which I'm going to be telling you here is fact, and they are very much researchable, and you can actually find out for yourself. You can go and verify. You can verify for yourself. The reason why I'm putting on this cap here is that is the moment where Nigeria is about to witness a change they have never witnessed before since 1960 when they have independence. And the belief of this very man right here, the perception is what is going to change Nigeria, revolutionize Nigeria, because if this man, based on his past record, could be able to do what he said he would, then there is a lot that's going to change. And that change is what a lot of people have been clamoring for. It's going to be a revolutionary change. Now, let me start by saying that 80% of what the US government is doing is for their own citizens, for the betterment of their own citizens. Now, 80% of what Nigerian government is doing is for the benefit of their own pocket and their own family and unborn generation. Now, you can look at that, how horrible that is. If you don't understand what that means is, if US is going to war or invading another country today, is to have abundance of military arsenals and have a lot of things in store for US citizens, right? But when Nigeria don't go to invade other countries, instead Nigeria will scavenge their own citizens. Nigerian government will scavenge their own citizens and give to other neighboring country. For instance, the recent one that just happened about Niger, that's just the tip on the iceberg. What about the railroad that is from Lagos State heading to Niger? That's another one. So if you start looking at it, there are a lot of them. All right. So there was a time where there is a lot of attention, compensation on the other world, why Nigeria population in Nigeria are languishing in poverty. So it's still ongoing. It hasn't stopped. Now let me go again to say that since 1960 to this very date, the 2022, if you can check Nigerian history very well, what you would notice there is that there is something that is seriously coming on, and it doesn't stop. And what I mean, what is coming on and doesn't stop is corruption. It's not just corruption, theft in a huge volume. And this theft is not performed just by the Nigerian ordinary citizens, it's performed by politicians and stakeholders. You name it. So if you check Nigerian history, what has been repeating itself from 1960 to now is financial fraud, theft, and you name it. And so per each governance, per each president that step in, promise he's going to do better, but at the end, he doesn't even do better. I'm going to say, based on my own knowledge, the first time Nigeria started taking a little bit shape is when Abacha stepped in. But Abacha, before leaving, he looted Nigeria. Though Abacha is one of the very strongest dictator Nigeria ever had. But he had a kind of power which, if you say anything against him, you'll not live to tell the tale the next day. Then the next time which I could be able to notice that Nigeria is taking shape is Yar'Adua time, because Yar'Adua actually came into office and he said publicly that what brought him into power is not free and credible election. And when someone trusts you with that kind of attitude, then you know that he's actually in for a change. Now, the other time which Nigeria noticed some significant change is at the time of Jonathan. But when White House got involved and get him pushed out and allowed his vote to be trampled upon by the current administration, that is where Nigeria started having a major problem. But before this very moment, there have been a lot that's going on in Nigeria, which a lot of you guys are not seeing. Nigerians who are trying to flee out of Nigeria get thrown into Atlantic Ocean to swim forever, or to pass through the horrific desert heat and either they get eaten by lions or whatsoever, or trying to pass through, smuggle themselves through porous borders to Europe to escape the torture of political atrocity in my own book. Why should a nation that has so much in abundance suffer? I mean, why should their citizens suffer the way Nigeria suffer? If you don't know the amount of suffering that's going on in Nigeria, I'm gonna say, each time the dollar had a peep against Naira, that is how much times Nigeria have to suffer to earn what you have to. Now, for instance, right now, the bank can give you at the bank rate of the normal exchange rate, so therefore you have to depend on the black market, right? The source for dollar to buy whatever I want to buy, import from overseas. Yes, Nigeria has been importing. Now, and the sole export is oil and liquefied petroleum gas, no any other some sort of product which I'm so much aware of that they produced themselves, like you can talk about in China, Japan, Taiwan, you name it, Malaysia, Singapore. In that situation where Nigeria isn't producing, they're consuming. And I was saying something before this one came in that if you don't understand the suffering of Nigeria right now as it is at the local market or the black market, the exchange of dollar to Naira is $1 is equals to 725 Naira. What that means is Nigeria have to work 725 times to earn what a US citizen is gonna earn. That is hell. It is not just suffering, it's not working. Now let's look at some other factors again, which a lot of you guys are not looking at, because now that astronomical difference in the dollar exchange makes it extremely difficult that Nigeria, who are so dependent and so much about consumption, cannot import any item from overseas, from US and you name it, down. Now, why did I decide to compare US and Nigeria? Because that has been the major comparison when you talk about Nigeria. The next thing they want to talk about is US. And yes, a lot of Nigerians has fled to US to live. And the talk of why Nigeria succeeds more when they are in US than even the white people, than even the black citizens, the black US citizens. Now, which I say that a lot has happened to Nigeria, that politicians has happened to Nigeria as a result of fraud and thefts in billions of nairas and billions of dollars. But why leaving Nigeria here underdeveloped? We cry about the underdevelopment of Europe, of Africa by European, but the second phase is underdevelopment of Africa by African leaders. That's something which it's very shocking, right? South Africa is quite different because you can actually say, if you start to check the population, the white and the black there, it's almost the same aggregate, and therefore, so you can't try to put people in danger like that without involving the Western culture, without the Western nation. But Nigeria, where you have almost 95% of black people and not intermixed, even if anyone is dying there, the West doesn't really give a shit, because at the end of the day, what they care about is their own interest. So what has happened to Nigeria? When we talk about unemployment rate, I'm going to be saying the real figure which you're going to be looking at here is 80% of Nigerians are not employed by Nigerian government or through Nigerian government aid. As a matter of fact, there is no such thing as Nigerian government aid. I'm going to say this and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to clarify and give you the reasons why I say there is no Nigerian government aid. The aid which you have in the Nigerian sector, in the Nigerian system, are for people who are working directly for the government. Let's say like free healthcare, low-cost buildings, accommodations, and all that, right? But when we talk about comparing the government benefits of US and Nigeria, I think that's the point where a lot of people don't get why most Nigeria flee from Nigeria to US and don't want to come back. And that is why most Nigeria that flee from Nigeria to US never ever want to get back to Nigeria again. So, and they just put, I'm not telling you they put up to 90% of the work which they do in Nigeria, they put just like 20%, 20 to 40% of the hard work which they put in Nigeria here in the US system or in any country of the world, not just US. And it started blossoming, it started booming. The reason there is because Nigerian education system is shit, right? Nigerian payment structure is shit. Now, Nigerian economic growth also is shit because in US there are a lot of them who out there, Singapore, Malaysia, China, they just put only just fraction of the effort which they have been putting on in Nigeria here that doesn't work, and it started moving. And what really happened when we talk about it is that Nigerian government has failed. I'm not gonna say on 2 counts, on 10 or up to 60 years. Failed more than that. They're talking about 62 years year celebration. There is nothing. I mean, there is nothing to celebrate on that 62 years aside corruption. Unemployment rate climbing high, students, joblessness everywhere, poor economy, bad road. Dumping ground, just like the President Buhari said of recent the other time that Nigeria is not a dumping ground, and yet I was actually looking up to see if it's not a dumping ground for cars, for salvage car, because why he said that is because 90% of cars that are in Nigeria right now are coming through the salvage yard, Copart, Auction Export, Calista. There are a lot of them. So that is why he used that word that Nigeria is not a dumping ground. And why is 90% of cars in Nigeria? Probably this one which I'm using right now is from scrapyard, because Nigeria literally cannot afford the cost of a brand new car. Most who can be able to afford it, they wouldn't be able to do that because the astronomical difference between the brand new car and the used car is huge that you can't do it. All right. Now there are a few people who can be able to afford brand new cars in Nigeria. One, as you might guess, is the politicians, stakeholders, which the federal government or the government officials buy for them, right? Now, the next people you are going to think about is the entrepreneurs, the business mogul who really have done so greatly in their own business areas to be able to fend for themselves, which I'm going to talk about are the people who can be able to afford it. But when you check the costs, it's really huge that some of them are going to prefer to save it and just drive a used car that comes from salvage yard and they're reworked it than going to put that chunk of money into buying a brand new car. So the lot that has happened to Nigeria, which I'm about to explain, is the Nigerian education system is shit. I mean, you have JAMB that there is no some sort of enrollment after your high school education into the college. So you have to go through a lot of rigorous process, which to me is a fraud on its own self. JAMB, for instance, which if you are to actually you don't get into any high institution or college without JAMB, and that JAMB now is gaining weight. The cost of registration is gaining weight. All right, there is a time that this JAMB generated some revenue which they wouldn't know what to do with, that they have to actually coin a word that a python swallowed a staggering huge amount of millions in Nigerian money, which was actually a revenue generated from JAMB making registration. So what is that registration? In Western culture, when you are trained to do anything for any period of time, there should be award of a certificate that doesn't just expire. But it's not the same thing that happened with JAMB, because after your college, after your high school, you go back into reading furthermore to be able to ace the JAMB. And after you ace the JAMB, there is aptitude test. There are a lot of things. All right. So now, where is that money going? That's my first question. After that money, where the money is going? Why does the certificate has to expire every year, so you have to keep registering again? So if suppose a student aced it within this year and he didn't have a financial capital to actually be able to get into the high institution within that time, let's say within the time which he actually aced the JAMB, then all his effort becomes in vain. His money becomes in vain. I mean, he loses money. So a lot of them. Then other part which actually make me to tell you that Nigerian school system is shit is because there are a lot of bombardment of things that are not viable in this very environment that they have to bombard on students' head, all right? And at the end, the environment here, there is no any government institution or some sort of industrial sector that is actually gearing to, to be able to put you in that direction. Let's say like people who are in organic chemistry or biochemistry, reading about plutonium, uranium, or whatsoever, right? There is no such facility in Nigeria here where you can actually be useful. And you talk about people who are reading astronautic engineering. whoa, we don't have any spaceship in Nigeria. I don't even think if Nigeria do have any real functioning satellite, not to talk about going to space. So why such kind of cost? So there are a lot of them out there, a lot of costs that are not viable to Nigerian system economic growth, which are being studied. They're wasting people's time. And if you check, let's take a look at it on the statistics rate of 1 to 10. If you check any Nigerian who studied whatever I study in any college, 70 to 80% of them are not practicing what they studied, including me. So that is why I said that Nigerian education is some sort of a sham and a scam. So I think the best way to actually do that is to abolish that education system and think about what our own environment, what Nigeria really needs. And that is what our education system should focus on, because that's what is going to propel our economic growth to the stratosphere. Not practicing what not talking about reading, studying a course that's actually viable in Germany, in Europe, in some other country that is not feasible here. It's a waste of resources. So. And which a lot of college in Nigeria do. When you don't meet up with a cutoff mark, they quickly swipe you off to any course which they feel like, regardless of if that is what you really want to read, if you have the brain to actually carry it or something. So now it boils down that thousands of graduates that outburst and graduate out of school every year. There is no any plan to actually curb them. There is no any plan to employ them. There is no any organization helping to be able to, queue them up the way it is in US. Suppose you don't have a job. Suppose you are unemployed, to help to train you and gear you up to what you're going to do that's going to be sustainable, and also possibly employ some other persons. Let's say like encouraging a micro scale business. It's just of recently we started hearing about Tony Elumelu and some other things which I don't think it's up to 13% or even 10% of Nigerian population. That program didn't cover up to that. So to me, it is a failed system. That attempt is a failed because it just only empowers few. Now, when we talk about the Nigeria problem, there are too many of them. One is that there is no such thing as grant from the federal government. I have a lot of mechanics who talk to me about things over there from US who say the government assisted in they bought some of the tools which they have through government grant or some other through many means. There are too many of them, right? There are too many benefits of the US government which is so enticing. All right, you talk about the free healthcare or health insurance, you talk about the food stamps. There is no food stamps in Nigeria. There is no free healthcare in Nigeria. If you're not a stakeholder, if you're not among the political class, there is nothing for you. What about the job? There is no student aid, like a student grant or whatsoever, student loan. There is no such thing in Nigeria. What about mortgage system? There is no mortgage system. There is no real mortgage system. For whatever you see any Nigerian do or own, he struggled for it from grassroots to up there without any federal government assistance. And the boring part, the most disturbing part is that after when he get up here, then the federal government comes around, or the government comes around to sniff around for tax. Now, speaking of the tax, I know a lot of you guys complain about tax in overseas, that you pay too much tax, this and that, but that's crap. Compared to the opportunities which the government actually gave you, talk about UK, France, Europe, you name them, US. You have a lot of things which the government are giving you at a platter of gold, all right? And which makes a lot of you guys to be very picky of the kind of job you want to do. It saddens me when I see a lot of you guys in the US who are complaining to be homeless. And I think that's where I have a problem with that saying where Buhari actually said that Nigerians are lazy, because he doesn't understand Nigeria. He doesn't understand what Nigerian youths actually go through in a day to make just to eat a square meal. He doesn't understand what it is to be in Nigeria. He doesn't feel it. He didn't experience it for just once in a lifetime. So therefore, it's very easy for him to actually use that sweeping statement and say that Nigerian youths are lazy. But the reality there is that any Nigerian which you see there is a king on his own, because he have to go through 20 or 700 times of what each of you in the Western world out there are going to go through to make whatever you make. And that is the reason why when they come over there to Europe or the US and they just put just 40% of what they have been doing in Nigeria here, they start hitting it up here and there. Now, when we talk about the education system, we have the kind of school structures, infrastructures that doesn't even permit a very good environment for learning, where you have a class where the sun is really hitting, the UV is pouring down on you and you're sweating, you are trying to wipe your face while trying to see what the teacher is actually teaching you on the blackboard. All right. Now, aside that, being bombarded with some sort of ancient things that doesn't correlate to what you're actually going to see in the reality. It's absolutely boring and overwhelming. So when you step into environments that are well coordinated, like US and some other European countries and Asian countries, things that are moving better because you have a lot of things to assist you. Like for instance, in Nigeria here, let's say you talk about a mechanic. Almost every mechanic in Nigeria here have to sort themselves out. You have to, as a Nigerian, you have to sort yourself out, just like I said, from the scratch. Anything that you own, there is no mortgage that's going to help you. You want to take a loan from the bank, is extremely expensive. I mean, before you get to redeem that loan, the interest rate might have been getting up to 50% or even more of the loan which you actually collect. So it is overwhelming. So therefore, loan is not a good thing when it comes to business, especially for small-scale business that's about starting up. And federal government of Nigeria and government of Nigeria are not giving grants, a realistic grant, really good grant, then makes matter worse. So yes, it is extremely difficult to be a Nigerian. Where if you are, let's talk about some of the few things which I've highlighted so far. Let's talk about food stamp. There is no food stamp, all right? So if you lose your job, you and your family, you're gonna die if you don't do something. And that is why these Nigerians are often cracking their head thinking, you're talking about thinking outside the box. No, we go outside thinking outside the box to creating the box, all right? To create a different box. We think outside the box to the point of creating a box, because here you are all alone. You have to deal with it. If your own family don't have some sort of a financial taproot or some sort of a financial attainment that you're actually gonna step into and start growing up from there, you're gonna feel the pain. You're gonna really feel the gravity. You're gonna appreciate. I mean, you're gonna know that there is gravity up there and it's lying there on your shoulder as a man. So it's extremely hard to be a Nigerian. That's why you see people turning into criminals of different shit, because the system has failed them woefully. It has failed them. And if I'm going to actually explain to you, there are so many of them. We have a lot of minerals resources here in Nigeria, but each year, there is no single year that comes on that there is no financial fraud from a stakeholder or a politician looting one public fund or another, because there are things, infrastructure that's supposed to be put in place to help build the economy of this Nigeria, that from such infrastructure, from such industrialization or institution, it's not even something that the federal government even have to do itself. It just have to just build the infrastructure, or just put money there and let it start growing. It will fend for itself. It will put money in the federal government purse. It will employ some other youth, and it creates some sort of balance. But here, there is no some sort of investment or creating any institution. Let's say, for instance, I know pretty much about the mobile automobility, which you can do without talking about steel and rubber. Do Nigeria have rubber? Yes. Do Nigeria have steel? Yes. So why is Nigerian steel industry, Ajakuta steel industry, still left desolate? The politicians and the stakeholder prefers to import from Japan, US, Europe, you name it, instead of making one at the backyard here. So how did you actually expect Nigerians to actually grow? It's physically impossible. Now, when you talk about the housing stuff, I just only branch about the little here. When we talk about the housing scheme to actually help people, I can't tell you that there is any sort of a housing scheme that can be up to, let's say, 40% of Nigerian population, and not just 40%, or let's say 50%, 50% at least, 50% of Nigerian population, and at the subsidized rate that it can be affordable by average Nigerians. when you see buildings here, when you see buildings that people can be able to lease, not even just buy, you're talking about 1.8 million for a standard bungalow. All right, a standard bungalow, 1.5, 1.6, 1.8 million. Now, if let's say that if the Nigerian federal government has such kind of low-cost building, which I'm seeing something which they're talking about trying to do, which I don't believe is gonna exist. All right, it's gonna exist on the paper, it's gonna exist on the news, but there is no reality of it. All right, because even when there is, before it will get to other people, because of how fraction it is, the stakeholders might have bought it and decide to sell it for their friends, and that is how it has been happening. All right, so even if the benchmark which they have set the low-cost building to be around 1.5 million to 1.8 million, how do you expect an average citizen of Nigeria that's earning below $1 per day, that is living below $1 a day, to be able to afford a house of 1.8 million? It is unrealistic. It is not feasible. This is the truth, nothing but the truth. So they can't be able to afford it. They can't even be able to afford a 3 square meal a day with a very a sufficient protein inside it. When we talk about protein, one of the most expensive food product you can actually talk about in Africa or in Nigeria per se is protein. You talk about beef, you talk about chicken, you talk about any kind of, livestock. It's highly expensive. If you're gonna get, let's say like a pounds of rice, 2 pounds of rice, 2 pounds of rice for, like, let's say you're gonna get it like $20. All right, you're gonna be getting the same 2 pounds of beef or goats or chicken. You're gonna be getting it probably around $100. Okay, let me know. That's no, that's not an exaggeration. You're gonna be getting around $100. So now, when the cost is really that high, a lot of people who eat meal every day, when we say living below average, they're gonna concentrate on trying to eat what they can be able to afford, their financial capability can be able to purchase. And when that happens, you will see the declination from the protein, from the meal that's supposed to have a sufficient protein inside it. It could be 1 kilo, it could be half a kilo, it could be 2 kilo, right? Slide down, because they're gonna be moving towards where they can be able to purchase. So that tells you that average Nigerians eat meal that have no protein inside, a protein deficiency. You know what protein deficiency can actually do to human body? I want you to research that for yourself. That's just fraction of it. So if Nigerian federal government and government cannot be able to actually be able to control the economy, to which at least the lowest, which is one of the first 3 men's basic need, food, shelter, clothing, and whatsoever. If they can be able to get a quality food, then what do you think they can actually do? So it is highly overwhelming. Now let's talk about it again. On the other face of it, they talk about a free healthcare or health insurance. It's only stakeholder, because I get to know that when I have a cousin whom the father is actually a politician. So we are trying to, on emergency situation, trying to take her to hospital. So she said that she prefers to go to a federal staff clinic or federal medical center. We say why? He said it's gonna be free. So that's when actually dawned on me that, okay, so there is actually a free healthcare. But if you talk about the general hospitals or whatever general hospital, that's the name, federal medical centers where you have in Nigeria, there is a problem there. What's the problem there is that if you are in an emergency situation that it's gonna take like 5 minutes to rescue you, to save your life, then you don't go there, because if you go there, it's gonna be pretty much overcrowded, and you're gonna see a lot of people lining up there. It's more like going to the bank that you want to make a withdrawal in Nigeria. They're gonna just assign one accountant to you or whatever cashier to you. But when you are going to pay in, you have a lot of accountants waiting to cashier waiting to actually collect the money from you. So that's what it is when you go to Nigerian hospitals, that you want to actually maybe on emergency situation, you're gonna die there. You're gonna fucking die there. So now, if you compare the cost to other private hospitals that are not federal government or government hospitals, the difference is just so irrelevant that if you have that, all right? Now, in a country where you don't have a benefit from the government, you have to crawl your way all the way up. The financial Crime Commission, EFCC, that has been the institution that has been set up to actually tackle corruption. Even the boss itself, once upon a time, committed a fraud that I couldn't even get the money out of him. So what do you think is going to happen? Instead, the better choosing the youth who have been so much pushed to the wall, and those, be my guest, is what you now see as the internet fraudsters. Now, what happens when you Nigerian leave Nigeria to US? There are a lot of braining, there are a lot of calculation, a lot of hard work being put on in Nigeria by Nigerian youth, and it keeps failing because there are no facility or infrastructure from the government that's supposed to actually actualize those their ideology into reality. So when they go into an environment where there are facilities and institutions that can be able to make such kind of their imagination, they bring whatever they have in their imagination into reality, then you see them prospering. So most Nigerians which you see here are self-made. They have to crawl up, make it, or die. The word what I call it, the 50 cents there just matches Nigeria perfectly. You either make it or die trying. I heard Alicia Keys singing about New York is a land of whatever, that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere in the world. That is a whole bullshit. Because if you make it in New York and you come to Nigeria, you're gonna die. You're gonna die because nothing is working. Nothing works. When I mean nothing works, electricity is no stability in electricity. The road is terrible. You often have to be running to mechanic every now and then because of the terrible road. The federal government, couldn't even deal with the road. They haven't. I mean, do you know what it is? Do you know what it feels like? You just have to be here to actually know what you're talking about. So that is why when people can actually afford those high costs of brand new stuffs, they settle down with what is left of the salvage yard and salvage auctions, like auction export and whatever. I'm talking about car, not just only car, used smartphones, laptop computers, and the rest of them. So if suppose the EFCC would have be able to be getting back, or the ICPC or whatsoever have been getting back all the money that have been looted by politicians, and they're making good use of it, let's say just channel 10%. 10% is too much. Just channel 5% of it into Nigerian power sector. It's going to stabilize. It's going to stabilize. Okay, I was reading the other day on the internet where Nigerian steel industry, that the politicians often come out every time they are discussing it, they are going to revitalize it. Russia bank actually estimated how much it's going to cost to actually revitalize that steel industry and offer to actually fix it up, then run it and pay off how much which they put in there by their own self. Not federal government have to pay them. And up to this very moment, I'm wondering why the federal government refuses. Too many opportunities are actually outbusting right now. Like you talk about, even if suppose you don't want to concentrate on the crude oil stuff, that the refinery in Nigeria doesn't work. I mean, you have the kind of a giant of Africa that produce a large scale of crude oil, and not even one refinery, not even the modular refinery in their country is working. So every now and then there is a fuel scarcity that when it added the bar, it inflates the cost of the product in the market. We are not even talking about the exchange rate of dollar yet. Because since when Nigeria becomes very, very dependent and consumption, so muchly on consumption, at any time that the dollar added a peep against Naira, there is a problem. It's increasing the poverty rate in Nigeria. Nigerians are in a huge suffering and mess. There is always inflation. No price control. When you talk about the cost of labor market, there is no price control. So that's why I do often get angry with a lot of customers who import some of this used car from Western world. Then they can buy a part that's gonna cost maybe like $1,000 to actually fit it in, or maybe like $500, all right, equivalent. But it's often very difficult for them to pay just $50 that a mechanic who is going to actually fix it. So now, that is where I talked about, which I didn't actually finish up, which I talk about the payment structure of Nigeria. Why is it Nigeria is colonized by the Britain, but Nigerian government changed the steering from right to left, right? Now, if you check out the road map marking, it's still the same thing. They changed to US. The number plates, the same thing. But when it comes to the government benefit for the welfare of the citizens of Nigeria, there is no such implementation. So that's why Nigerians are running away from Nigeria. That's why Nigerians who flee from Nigeria after those horrific torture out of political atrocities, they get to do better in other countries than that they do in Nigeria. So when you start reading through, I can present it to you here, all the benefits that the government benefits US have for their citizens. You have no other reason. You will see a lot of Nigerians sell their property, sell their car, their house to relocate to US. It is that bad. It is that terrible. Just imagine. And they don't have any plans of coming back to this environment when war is done. A lot of people are crying that, oh yeah, there's a lot of brain draining from the Western world in Nigeria. Yeah, but the politicians in Nigeria created it. The government of Nigeria created it by underdeveloping Nigeria the more. Therefore, making Nigerians vulnerable to any job which they've been offered by the Western expatriate or the Western imperialist or Western nation, as you may call it. So it is that terrible. In my own opinion, Nigeria has to get it right through this man. And if they get it right, some are saying he actually said that he's going to fix Nigeria in 4 years' time. But why 4 years' time? If he fixes it within the 4 years' time, I don't think he should even get out of that very place. He should sit down there. He should sit down there and die there. He should sit down there. I'm not saying that he should get killed there. He should sit down there as years as it takes to keep reshaping it better, because the one of the worst thing that happens in Nigerian politics is when this person comes, if, let's say in Goodluck Jonathan, where he took the country to this very level, now this other government comes, they take it down here. You can't even see my hand, right? That is how down it is. They take it down here. Now another person has to come and start taking it up again. The next person comes, you have to take it 20 times downward or backward. So if someone has gotten it right, there is no need of allowing the person to go because of a tribal sentiment or political sentiment, because at the end of the day, when it comes like 2023 is coming right now, they're going to bring two things which often tear the public or the masses apart so that their votes and conscience will be divided. They bring religion, they bring tribalism. Then to worsen it, they add politics into it. And when they spice it with politics, then the whole population is blown into proportion. I mean, a lot of people like me do often come out to say Nigeria is too big for one person to govern because the rate of tribalism is too much and mind-boggling that when one person get there, all right, he started thinking about his own people. If he's an Hausa person that is there, he'll start thinking about concentrating on developing only the Hausa, the northern area. If he's a Yoruba man, the same thing. So this is just the first time an Igbo man is trying to sit down there. I don't believe that Azikiwe or whatsoever is an Igbo person, because his decision doesn't make him an Igbo person. Igbo person will not be able to make such a delusional decision that he made during his own time. Yes, there is an Igbo person who I believe with every notion, every bit of my heart is an Igbo person. That's Ojukwu. And you can trace his own family, his own generation back to, his family lineage, but up to this very moment, he can't be able to trace Zik. So does it mean he's fall from this kind and become an Igbo person or an Igbo person overnight? The answer is no. So to me, I think maybe he's just one of those slaves that was captured to US. Now, I don't know how they groom him to be able to speak whatsoever Igbo, but the look of his face doesn't look like an Igbo man to my own understanding. You might thought that is your own opinion, but my opinion is based on his stand on the matter about the Igbo tribe doesn't make him a representative or someone who is an Igbo person, all right? So now, don't be shocked, like I said. Take your time and review it. Go through, just type into the Google government benefit, type it for different countries, for Qatar, US, UK, India, Pakistan, Iraq, Iran, Taiwan, Chinese. I know there's gonna be some other countries that are not doing like Nigeria, but the next question you should be asking yourself is, do they have the large population of human resources that Nigeria have? Because that population is a very good resources that helps China and most Asian countries to develop. So if well explored and utilized. Now, if that population is not well, then it becomes a problem, because you're going to be burning out trying to create a job. You'll be hearing thousands of jobs or 100,000s of jobs. Hey, why would you be talking about 100,000 or even 20,000s of jobs for a population of 200 million, whopping 200 million. It doesn't make any sense. It seems like someone is just thinking backwards. Why I'm putting up this video here is to make Nigeria to understand that these are the reasons that makes Nigeria vacate to US, divert to US, because there are a lot of benefits there that you don't even have to overstretch yourself, burn out too much, crack your head, and maybe within your 30s, 35, you already started having gray hair. 35 or 30, you already started having gray hair. Not because you're old, but because of mental problem, mental depressions, emotional depressions, and a lot of them. So guys, I think this is why I'm going to be capping it up today to save your time. I've taken a lot of your time, but at least right now you have a typical overview of what is going on in Nigeria. The last one which I'm going to be using to cap it up is the payment structure. I actually tried to talk about this before and later it skipped through my mind. Nigeria is colonized by Britain, that even up to this very day, Britain is using the regional system of governance. So why is Nigeria not practicing regional system of governance? That's the question we need to ask. Then the second thing is, why is JAMB used as a hindrance and as another measure to actually curb people from going to school, despite the fact that the school is dilapidated and not even fueling our economic growth? And number three, why are we practicing education system that doesn't fuel our economic growth and doesn't help our own kind of environment where we're coming from? Because if we don't grow from here, where are we going? Then third, the payment structure of Nigeria is too terrible and very horrible. You're talking about paying someone some peanut of maybe like 15,000 or even 30,000 or 40,000 per month is still extremely poor. How much is 30,000 naira per month? You know what it is, guys? That's minimum wage, right? That is less than $80, $80. That's extremely low. So why is Nigeria not practicing? We're not even talking about pay per week. There is no pay per hour job in Nigeria. There is no pay per, if it has to be pay per week or even pay per hour, you have to work yourself out, and it is not in a definite terms where everyone knows it. Let's say in building construction, if suppose you're going to be a bricklayer, it's going to be based on how many blocks you count. It's not based on the hour. All right? So you can decide to work the whole day, work 12 hours. There are a lot of Nigeria that works more than 13 hours a day. 13 hours. There are some of them who don't know what is overtime. So it is a huge problem. All right? For the federal government and stakeholders, there is vacation for them. There is a free health care. There is a lot of allowances, all right? A lot of benefits. But for those who aren't there, it is a hell. It is, they will prefer anywhere other than Nigeria because the suffering is extremely much. It is no more working, it's suffering. Because you can't get to watch, you don't give people, when there is no money circulation and people are not really making the money, how would you expect them to even pay when even change the cost? Now, anyone has the ability to throttle his own cost of commodity upward without anyone coming to stabilize it. So therefore, anyone can just wake up any day. If suppose it's just as little as this thing here, and he decide that that's supposed to cost like a box, and he decide that he want to sell it for 10 grand. Nobody gives a shit. The government has no price regulatory system because I suppose they failed in their own way. So why would they even go to even regulate price of other things? So that payment structure we're talking about per month, it keep people impoverished. All right, it keep people burning out, working more and earning less, putting so much work and only to eat like an ant. So it's very terrifying and very problematic. So I urge you Nigerians to open your eyes on 2023. We know there's a lot that's gonna actually be in place, and this man here is not representing himself but representing the youth. I believe that he's so much convinced a lot of you out there to believe, because up to this very point now, Nigeria have pretty much, for those of them who have learned their lesson, that you don't judge politicians by what they say but by their past records. Because a lot of them have a lot of sweet sugar words that they often come every 4 years to come and deceive a lot of people on. But judge the person by the past records that can be verified, right? If it is not verifiable, then we don't trust it. We don't trust it, right? And think of it, it's not a peep. Some of them right now, as soon as they are there, they want to get up to 8 years. It's more like 8 years of enslavement that nothing works, right? So that payment structure, like I talk about, we're actually going to talk about it. The healthcare, the educational sector, you name it. There are a host lot of problems which you actually need to address to be able to move this nation forward if you have the interest at heart. Okay, guys, I remain obedient and I'm gonna be useful. If you find this information which I share with you very informative, share with others. But for right now, I believe most of you who are in US, who are white people, or the black people in US who are not Nigerian, can be able to understand what it is to be a Nigerian. And if you don't understand it from this video, then I don't think you're gonna really understand it any further. Yeah, like I said, for most of you who are Nigerians, type this on Google, then you will understand the reason why a lot of Nigerians are selling their properties and decide to move outside this very environment. It's more like calling Nigeria abandoned ship. It has gotten to that stage because it is, it countless of times, like I said, since 1960 to this very moment, no one should expect country with a lot of abundance of mineral to undergo the trade Nigerians are going through. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.